Hey, welcome to the Third Growth Option Podcast, where we talk about all things growth. Yes, even and especially those hard parts, where you shed some skin and pick yourself up by the bootstraps. Hey, I'm Benno Dunkelspuler, Growth Sherpa and OG #Growth Nerd. We're on a mission to redefine success inside and outside the business, one TGO episode at a time. I am Benno, host of Third Growth Option Podcast, and today I'm with David Van Himbergen, CEO of Real Paper, and I'll give a little bit more background. But first of all, welcome to Third Growth Option Podcast, David.
Thanks for having me, Benno.
Yeah. So this episode is, I'm dying to dig into these sort of innovation battles that you have been involved in. What I find interesting about it is that they're both with, a big company, P&G, where you did sort of a Skunk Works innovation Manhattan project for Tide. So that's sort of both small startup within a big company, and now you're CEO of Real Paper, which is a 4 or 5 year old startup. So Still fairly early, not decades old, still a startup. The other thing I think is interesting for the listeners to know is that you are a math major by training, so you come from with a very analytical background, but then you have this sort of scrappy Skunk Works Manhattan project thing going on here. So talk a little bit about, just kind of give a sense of this innovation project at P&G, just Tide innovation project.
Yeah, so I spent 18 years at Procter Gamble. So like you said, I started in maybe a non-traditional role. I was more of an analyst, but I thought that those experiences were very helpful to establish a foundation for how do you analyze a business and understand how to shape strategy, et cetera. So, throughout my career, I eventually moved into brand management, and ultimately in my last assignment with the company, I was responsible for leading global innovation on Tide. And in that role, there was just kind of a desire that, this was 2014, 2015. So there was a lot of momentum around the lean startup and how do large companies operate more entrepreneurially, take smaller bets, act faster, learn quickly. And so
the Eric Ries book, right?
Yes, Eric Ries.
I think it was Eric Ries that sort of coined that term.
That's right. Yep. And so with that came a desire for the innovation organizations to not just think about what's the next evolution of the product lines in which we sell today, but how do we think about new business models? And it was a great opportunity for me because, my prior experience running the businesses or in brand management had all been downstream. Like I'd just come off the Target team where it couldn't be any farther upstream and where we're selling into a specific retailer. So to be I guess walking into that assignment, there was a little hesitation of, I'm really far upstream. It could be very conceptual. It's hard to see anything to get to market. Or you just kind of buying your time knowing that you've got to be in a rotation of one of these assignments to move back into managing the business. But I think with this opportunity to desire to do something differently, it really excited me of like, okay, let's break through. Let's think about a totally different business model and let's recraft what the addressable market opportunity for the laundry business could be. And so, I kind of laid out this idea of like, look, we focus mainly at in-home laundry, but there's an equally large side of the market, which is away from the home. And that can be dry cleaning, it can be laundromats, but there's this growing desire of, young millennials, early career, spending time, trying to develop their careers. And really the scarce resource in that context is not really money, it's time. And so how do you solve that for them? And especially where they may not have access to a laundry machine. So kind of pulled all that together, eventually pitched it to the president to say, look, I think we need to start a new venture here where we can provide a service to consumers to do laundry for them. We'll focus on dense urban markets where you've got young professional careers that have more money than time. And they will then outsource their laundry task by calling us up through a phone, because services through a mobile app are becoming more and more popular with the growth of Uber, et cetera. And I guess more trusting in that service experience to call someone to do it. So give me a little bit of money. Let me go run this thing for 6 months out of Chicago. And that ultimately brought me to Chicago to work out of an innovation hub and hire a team around us to go tackle that
So,
that
so
project.
the idea of this Tide innovation project was, let's not just think about how to reinvent Tide, come up with a better formula, better packaging, different pricing, different distribution strategy, but
Mm-hmm.
let's think of a different way to solve cleaning problems at a larger level that could include a service, not just a product. So
Yeah,
that's how
that's
you.
right. And part of my experience is we would step into consumer research, focus groups, et cetera, and just an easy open-ended question to ask some of those participants is, what frustrates you about laundry? And they would kind
Where
of
do I
jokingly say,
start?
like,
Having
I
to do
hate
it every
doing
week.
it. Like, yeah. And we'd
Right.
be like, no, no, we're talking about, like, can we get better whitening? Can we get better stain removal, color care? What are the different aspects that we can solve for you? And I'm like, why are we ignoring that first problem that they articulated? Like, that's the real issue that's meaty to solve that no one else is really taking on. And a way to build more of a direct relationship with your consumer where you're serving them directly.
So you went to Chicago. Talk a little bit about, was there a team there? Did you have to hire people? What did you guys do to try to validate the, problem and validate solution, ideas you had for solutions?
Yeah, I think the great thing about the experience was the sponsors back in the company realized that ultimately the company could be my number one interference in getting anything done because of the bureaucracy, et cetera. So they were encouraging me to get out, truly operate as if you're an entrepreneur. You'll have access to resources, you'll have their support, but we don't have an idea, we don't have a playbook. Go out and figure it out. And
Right.
so, I found 1871, which is a large innovation hub and co-working space in central Chicago, which the Chicago Entrepreneurial Committee or community had resourced and was a big centerpiece of it. And I just got a desk there and laid out a basic plan
One
of what I
person,
need to accomplish. One
team of
person,
one.
just me. Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
To start, obviously,
Three
but
of you, me, myself, and I.
yeah, I got a desk there, and then identified kind of the 2 to 3 roles I thought we needed to build out the initial concept and bring it to market, because it was all about learning in the market. It wasn't
Mhm.
conceptual claimed usage. It was like, let's figure out the cheapest, easiest way to get this service up and operating, and then consumers will tell us if they like it or not by selecting to put their credit card on file using the service. And then we validate a lot of the assumptions around frequency of usage, what type of garments are they sending in, what's the process for cleaning and caring for those. And so, yeah, it was me initially. I eventually hired 3 other people to help us get it off the ground, and kind of told them, like, look, this isn't, you're not really an employee of Procter and Gamble. You're an employee for this project, of which we only have funding for 6 months.
Right.
So there's no guarantee
So
that this
figure it out
lasts.
fast.
Yeah. So, but I mean, part of that constraint and maybe pressure is what allows a lot of entrepreneurs to thrive.
Well, it's the real world. I mean, that is a real world. I mean, there's a lot of our listeners are entrepreneurs, or smaller, mid-sized companies. I mean, smaller than P&G, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That in order for them to think about how can I take this new product or service idea to market, how do I do that without screwing up my core business,
Yeah.
and without diverting too many funds and too much attention away from the core business. And that's
Yeah.
essentially the situation you were in.
Yeah. And you had to convince them to maybe leave a secure job to say, look, this is an exciting opportunity. There's no
Trust
guarantee,
me.
but if we figure it out, like it could be, a big, great
Right.
experience to put on your resume, if nothing else.
Right.
Yeah.
What were some of the early problems? There was one particular sort of pivot you told me about a couple calls ago, where I, I think it was the original thought was that you could go after a certain number of zip codes in Chicago
Yeah.
that included single homes or single residents and multi family residences, and then there was a pivot to multi, just like high rises.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Talk
I
talk
think
about
like
that.
that initial concept was, if you want to be the Uber for laundry and serve anyone at any time, how would that work? And I think what we quickly found out is it is so inefficient to just drive from point to point and pick up one order that the financial model would never work. You had to figure
Right.
out like operations and the logistics aspect of it were your biggest cost driver that could fluctuate. And
Mhm.
so, we first went to market with a test beta because we were kind of committed to like, well, let's just see how many consumers will order this. Maybe there's enough density in those orders that you can figure out how to route it and ultimately get to the the operational milestones we needed to hit. So calling it like 6 to 7 pickups per hour.
Right.
But even in that first 2 weeks, it became pretty clear that look, this I just don't see this ever working. And that was, I think, really where the team that we brought in was a kudos to them, and that Christmas break. So we launched basically middle of December. We launched a test market middle of December 2015, and by that Christmas break, the other three employees would like grab me like, "Hey, this can't work. We've been looking at the marketplace, and there are these other models where you get batched pickup and delivery, and fundamentally, like we believe that's the only way that this is going to work and be efficient enough to scale." And it was, I think, the first big moment where, okay, this is a big strategic pivot.
Hmm.
Um, it's a deviation from what we had initially sold into management. And so, how are we going to move forward? And like, okay, do we need to take it back to P&G? Then I've got to align all these people to the pivot. And like, and I think ultimately, I think what freed me up is it was like, look, this is an entrepreneur like off working and solving solutions. It's obvious to me that this is the solution going forward. And this could at least be the more efficient way to demonstrate the potential of this service. Make the call, go back to P&G to inform them that this is what you're doing. But, we needed to pivot in how the app was set up, establishing different delivery routes so that certain zip codes would get Monday, Wednesday, Friday service, others would get Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. So you could really batch those pickups and deliveries. So every time you visit a building, if you have clean clothes, you're dropping them off and you're picking up the dirty ones at that same stop. So we just said, all right, let's make the call. Let's rescope how we're going to develop the app that we were partnering with and get that ready for kind of a larger launch in April of 2016.
The reason I love this particular story is because here you are. You said you were with P&G, I think 18 years, 15, 18
Yeah.
years, right? So you are essentially, a career guy in a big bureaucracy of a multi-billion-dollar publicly traded company, and the culture of those of Fortune 50 companies is not to, you know, um, ask for forgiveness, but you're supposed to ask for permission, not forgiveness.
Uh-huh.
But you decided to do the entrepreneurial sort of cowboy way of asking for forgiveness, Let's just
Hmm.
do it, and I'm convinced this is the right, which is what you have to do in real life, especially in startups, especially in innovation, because you're trying to invent the future, and you're trying to catch it right before
Yeah.
somebody else catches it. Good for you
Yeah.
that you just
And if we had to go back and align everyone at the company that was,
it would have been a
you know,
year
a
later,
sponsor, it would have taken 2 to 3 weeks, and we had 6 months. And so I'm like, those
right?
2 to 3 weeks are critical right now.
Yep.
We're going to do it. And yeah, we'll move forward. And if it's the wrong decision ultimately, all right. Like, but we had the courage to say, this is the path we're going to go forward with. And everyone on the team that was working the day to day was fully aligned that, yes, absolutely, this is what we need to do. So we did it.
Good for you. Good for you. There were also some internal. There was a little bit of internal competition, as I recall, between your idea of a laundry service, pickup service, and then there was the idea of the Tide dry cleaning locations, right?
Yeah.
So there was a little internal rub there, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, and that was, a model that P&G had been working on for a few years. It was a franchising model, so very different business model altogether. Um, but its intent was really to place physical locations in the suburbs to serve that same consumer that's buying liquid Tide at Target and provide a dry cleaning service to them.
Right.
And it's I think the problem in these large corporations is it becomes very competitive. And so there were certain people that were seeing us as a competitive threat of going against their business model. And so what
Hmm.
I really had to do is reframe everything back to them to be like, this can be complementary. This can help grow and accelerate your business. This can bring more value and profit opportunity for your franchisees that can accelerate your development path because, the way it's playing out now is you've had some great success, but there's still, you know, from what your initial goal was to number of locations that you had hoped to open up, you're, not there. So, and that ultimately was a game changer too, because, we got that organization aligned and then we got one of the franchisees that had already established a location in the suburbs of Chicago to be our cleaning partner. So we knew that the quality of care that we would get initially was already representative of the Tide standard that had been established among that organization. So they had a dry cleaning facility set up to handle any of those garments. And then
Right.
we just installed a couple washers and dryers in the back of another location where they had enough space to accommodate to create a wash and fold facility. So it was something that, we didn't have to figure out a location. We didn't have to qualify another supplier. It was, let's buy two washers, two dryers, put, $5,000-10,000 into construction for piping and everything else.
Right.
But, within a month or two, we were basically ready to go.
And you had turned, sort of a competitive energy into a collaborative energy
Yeah.
in a
And
way,
that's,
right?
again, I think going back to where the president of the business, where I knew I had his support and him saying, this organization is going to get in your way. Don't let it happen. Use me to allow you to like break through those barriers. We kind of knew we could craft something here and create kind of a shared opportunity.
Yep.
Um, and having that franchisee in Chicago then also, I think, allowed other franchisees that had just heard about it because we ended up the story ended up breaking on like Good Morning America or the Today Show one morning when we're in the office and like, oh my gosh, we were on the Today Show. And so you
Right.
get a franchisee that's in Florida thinking about, wait, like corporate Tides doing something that's
Right.
serving wash and fold and dry cleaning. That's kind of my market opportunity. And it's like, no, like it's a task that we're building towards. And if successful, this is ultimately an opportunity for you to generate more revenue and be more productive in your locations that you've invested in.
Before we jump over to the second big innovation gig you've got going as CEO of Real Paper, any thoughts on what you would have done differently with the Tide um, service laundry service project looking back at it, any sort of, oh man, I learned this.
Yeah, I mean, I guess my nature is I tend to not look back with a lot of regrets. Certainly you want to
Yeah.
learn from your experiences. We could have accelerated some of the learning that we did. Ultimately we realized focusing on the large multifamily apartments, like a 200 to 300 apartment unit, like if you can get those on board and get them to be somewhat your exclusive partner, they're then in the camp to help advertise and market for you. And so you get higher share of the garments being cleaned in that building.
Right.
Um, so, like, again, that just drives the efficiency of the model because you've got 50 users in that building instead of five. And
Right.
so every stop is much more productive. So I think probably an acceleration on that learning would have been beneficial. Um, I think the other thing would just be there was still an opportunity to learn further on how to build out wash and fold and meet that consumer need more so, because that was really more incremental to the Tide business. Um, and what you found is that if you focus too much on the operational aspects of just making it efficient, you'd focus on these class A 200, 300 apartment buildings, which those would tend to have washers and dryers in the individual's unit. So that tension or need for me to outsource my laundry was lessened because I don't have to then take all of my laundry and sacrifice my Saturday morning to make that a laundry day. I could do a load of laundry on a Wednesday night. I could do a load at a Thursday night. So it never
Right.
really flared up to be much of an issue. And so how you serve those customers, you have to figure out the balance of, okay, logistically, it may be less efficient to serve them, but how do you find where that opportunity and the tension is greatest, and then figure out the operational model of how to really serve them? Because I do think it's still, like, you just talk to so many consumers in the area, especially
Hmm.
those that, hey, I've got a washer and dryer in the basement of my complex, but it's a mess and I have to have quarters on hand. I have to go down there. I put my load of laundry in the washing machine, but if I leave for 15 minutes, all of a sudden someone's coming down, taking my clothes out and just throwing them on top of the dryer and
Right.
taking the available machine. So there's so many frustrations there that there's a problem to solve. It's just, I think we only solve the portion of it. There's I think a better way that we could ultimately uncover to figure out how to serve those consumers.
And it's all about finding that sweet spot, right, between
Yeah,
ease of delivering the service and size of the customer's pain point, right? And those two need to be sort of balanced with each other in order
yeah.
to build a profitable business model around it. So the answer you gave me on what could have gone better is basically have the aha moment a month earlier.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
which I think is true for all of us all the time, right?
Right, yeah.
So you took on a new role, or you took on a leadership role with Real Paper. Talk a little bit about that. We have a few minutes left here. To why Real Paper? It's about sustainable paper. It's a sustainable product. Kind of
Yeah.
an talk a little bit about Real Paper.
Yeah, so I had met the founder of Real Paper, now about 5 years ago, and he had a concept for the deck. And really, if you think about it, paper is a huge category. It's $18 billion. Everyone uses it every day, whether it's toilet paper, paper towels. It's all about delivering convenience of clean and then disposal. Um, but the problem with that is that a lot of the solutions that we use today aren't very sustainable. We, you know,
Throw it away.
yeah, we use trees to grow, or trees that take 40 to 50 years to grow, that are, in a critical part of our, the Canadian boreal forest that helps to absorb a lot of the man-made carbon that we're creating. 40 to 50 years to grow a tree, and then you cut it down, create a single-use paper product, and flush it down the system. It just doesn't add up. But if you could find a more sustainable source like bamboo, which is a grass, one of the fastest growing plants, when you harvest it, it regenerates from the same root structure. You could create a much more sustainable product that allows us to enjoy that convenience that we're used to in our normal habits today. And so we do that, and then we wrap the products in recyclable or more sustainable materials, no plastics, just to decrease the overall carbon footprint of the category.
Right. So what got you excited? I mean, other than the sort of feel good, and that's maybe not the right word, but the
Mm-hmm.
feeling good about what
Yeah.
real paper stands for, sustainable, ecologically sound, and all of that. But there must have been another sort of hook to it to get you to leave Procter and Gamble and go work for a relatively small startup company
Yeah.
in 2000, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
2019, 20.
Yeah. Initially it's alignment to the mission, but really it's a huge category where there hasn't been a lot of innovation. And a lot of that's because of the
Right.
incentives in the category. For the economics to work for large paper manufacturers, they want to reduce the amount of changeover and run as
Yeah.
much of this as possible. So any large player is gonna, I'm gonna run what works. I need to run my machines 24/7 because they're expensive. So there's just
Yeah.
not the incentives out there to innovate. And so having kind of this novel, different approach and figuring out how to crack it and really tap into, this is a big category that is really just a small change, but is used by so many that just small changes can compound pretty quickly to make a meaningful impact overall. So, it's just the challenge of the category, the opportunity to create something that's innovative and different and transform a category for the better. It's just, I don't know. I like the challenge.
And I think another thing that struck me, or what I like about real paper, when I looked at your website. By the way, go ahead and give it a plug. What is it? REEL
Realpaper.com. Yeah.
paper.com. There you go.
REEL paper.com. Yeah.
There we go. See, now we gave it a little plug. What I
Mm-hmm.
liked about the website is that it's very well done from a branding and messaging perspective,
Yep.
which is not something I would expect. When I look at Bounty or Scott's paper or other paper products, branding, and sort of being having a cool and hip vibe is not there. Is I mean, your competitors don't do that, and you're doing that.
Yeah. Right. And even
Talk a
just
little
the
bit about the
opportunity to
importance of
serve.
branding.
Yeah. The importance of branding to connect and just, this category is largely made up of brands that have been around for 40, sometimes 60 years. And so, those brands age, they don't feel modernized. I think that was one of the things that really attracted me too when Livio, the founder, shared the concept deck with me, like I said, 5, 6 years ago, is that, wow, this is a really cool, compelling proposition that can connect with consumers that are looking for something different. And it's visually stunning and captures you. So that's the first hook you need. You've got to grab their attention and awareness in a shopping context where there's just a wall of paper products all over the place. Grabbing their attention is step one. And then you've got to have kind of the compelling sell story to say, this is why I'm right for you. So I think we pride ourselves a lot on that. And then, ultimately the third step is you've got to be able to deliver on the product experience to drive that repeat purchase, or you just don't have a sustainable business, sustainable from a financial standpoint, not just environmentally. And I think that's the other piece that we've done a lot to focus in on, is making sure that we could deliver a premium like experience without a lot of trade-offs so that consumers continue to buy it. And we have 81% of our subscribers buy a second box. And so it's 2 times what other digitally native brands have seen in subscriptions. So that's what's really exciting and just has been, I think, kind of the engine behind the business that just has allowed us to deliver compounded growth year over year.
So what you're talking about is the combination of your ability to sell in and then sell through, right? To sell into the
Yeah.
retail shelf at Target or wherever it is through
Mm-hmm.
good branding and differentiating yourself. Again, in a commodity business, I mean, paper
Yeah.
is commodity, right? So you're able to sell in through great branding, but then the sell through is because there's a there there. The product actually works, and people, you said 81% keep buying it or come
Yeah.
back for a second
Yeah. And
time.
historically, where there's been re, uh, toilet paper made from recycled fibers, the quality's not there. It's thin, it falls
Right,
apart, it's
right,
rough.
right.
And so consumers just were never satisfied with that. So those products really never took off or made up a significant portion of the market. But what we've been able to see, not only online where we've had success, but importantly through Target, is that consumers love this. The ratings, reviews come in, and just the steady growth of, velocity is up 60% versus a year ago. And
Nice.
that's what retailers love. Hey, I've got a very, sure, it's a strategic fit.
Right.
It's, bringing in the millennial shopper. That's a strategic focus for me. But also, it's pretty productive. We're turning at the same rate as a lot of conventional items are. So it's not a drag on their overall category sell through.
And you used the term. I've actually I stole your term. We want to become stronger before we become bigger.
Yeah.
In a conversation, and I mean that's really what I love about this real paper story, and what you're bringing to it is making an unsexy product sexy. Uh, Differentiating a commodity through a good brand, and then delivering, with all the sort of boring operational sourcing, product development, quality stuff, the hard, heavy lifting,
Yeah.
the unsexy work. You're putting both together, and you keep growing that brand. Both both of these stories to me are great innovation stories that are real life, and you've done some really cool things.
Yeah. Appreciate
Hey,
that.
thanks for sharing this. Hopefully, our listeners and viewers are got some good tidbits from you. If folks wanted to find you or reach you, maybe talk to you one on one, where's the best place to
Yeah. You can
get in
find me
touch
on
with you?
LinkedIn, David Van Himbergen. I think you'll put
Have
my
that in the show
spelling
notes.
out there. It's a long last name, but there's not many Van
I could
Himbergens
deal
out
with
there.
long
So
last names, David.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So reach out to me through LinkedIn, though. I'd love to talk and share stories and see how I can help.
Terrific. Thank you so much. This was great. We'll have to do another episode, and I'm sure you'll have another great. There'll be more innovation battles in your future. I can tell.
That's right. There always are, right? But that's when you're doing the good work.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Thanks,
David.
Benno.
Thank you for listening to this episode of TGO Podcast. You can find all episodes on our podcast page at www.realign4results.com. You can find me, Benno, host of TGO Podcast, there as well. Just email Benno, Benno, at realign4results.com. Let's keep growing.